Hello, hello, and welcome to our Wind and Truth live stream, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. For those that are joining us, I'm here with my good buddy, Chas from Bookish Chas, to discuss Wind and Truth. So, this was definitely, if not the biggest, most anticipated fantasy release of 2024. It was definitely one of the biggest, and I know it's one I was really looking forward to reading. I believe you were really looking forward to reading it as well. So we're here to talk about it. So what we're gonna do is first of all join the Discord. I'm pretty sure I've linked that down below. Dragon's Den Discord, where you can hit both me and Chas up, as well as the rest of us in there to chat all about this. So definitely make sure you check that out. And we're going to talk non-spoilers first. We're going to try and devote at least 30 minutes of this stream to non-spoiler chat, and then we're going to dive right into spoilers. I'm also going to be dropping in an invite here, a general invite into the Discord. So just go over to my section on the Discord there. I'm going to put a general invite if you want to join the stream. We're happy to have you join us at any point that you're ready. So let's start here. So first off, I'll say definitely it seems the reviews have been mixed on this from the very start. So Chad, why don't you tell us a little bit about your overall feelings of the book to start?
Yeah, well, I did like you and like everybody else. It seems like I went into it with not necessarily high expectations, but high anticipation for what was coming. And at this point, I read everything in the Cosmere, all of all of the short stories, little novellas, everything. So um, the end of Rhythm of War just really kind of slapped us across the face and okay, this is happening. So I went into it with a lot of anticipation and um you know my initial response to it is um I was I was okay with it. I was okay with it. I definitely felt like it could have been better, but I got a lot. I got a lot of answers to things that I was really curious about, and that made me really happy. And oh, hi, Maya.
Hi, Maya.
Glad to see you here.
Yeah,
Supporting dear old dad. That's a good thing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. And I know with the end of Rhythm of War, like that one, I really felt was definitely a setup book for what we
Hmm.
knew was probably going to be coming for Wind and Truth. Definitely, I felt there's like a lot of, I don't even know how to really describe exact, but a lot of setup. Like there's a lot of, moving, getting the pieces in place for the final place, so to speak, in Rhythm of War, which was also another big one. If you haven't read this series, like these are big books. I always recommend maybe start with Elantris or Warbreaker getting into the Cosmere. I've got a
Yeah.
video on the channel about that, my recommended reading order there. But yeah, so of course, at the end of Rhythm of War, we knew there was now we can't talk about spoiler-free Wind and Truth without some spoilers from previous books. I'm throwing that out there right now because this is the fifth book in the series. But of course, as we know, at the end of Rhythm of War, the deal was set that there would be 10 days, and each side, Odium and Downer, had to choose their champions. And this book, what I thought was really unique about the way this book was written, now, I've heard some people criticize it for being done in this style, but I actually kind of like this. Is
Yeah.
Sanderson split it up into 10 different days, and then in between the days there was these interludes, which were actually short little interludes but still provided some pretty awesome information, some really interesting things happening in those interludes. Actually like the way that was set up. Some people
Mhm.
didn't, but I like that as we break it down each day. So that was, for me, I thought that was a great way to approach that, especially since we knew the 10 days was coming. Like, what did you think about how that was split up in the book and how he kind of formatted it in that way?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, I thought that was perfect. I think it made a lot of sense because we already knew, like you said, going in that that it was 10 days. They gave that time to prepare and everything. So why not break it up over 10 days? Yeah. In fact, I feel like I almost like this format a little better than just making it a strictly switching between POVs. So
Yeah,
instead of that, in this book, we're switching between days,
yeah,
and we still
absolutely.
got some POV switches, of course, but
For sure. I think one of the things you mentioned is you kind of wish Downer had more screen time, so to
oh
speak.
man, I really do.
And I thinking back, I maybe could have mentioned this in my own review. I do have my spoiler-free review on the channel, by the way, if you want to go check it out. But kind of thinking back on that, it's maybe something I could have added in there is that at the end of Rhythm War, because we knew it was going to be Downer versus Odium, I actually did expect this to be much more heavily focused on Downer, but overall, I think he got less than 50% of page time or screen time.
You did. It
Not
was sad.
not not that I felt the Downer's parts were bad. I really enjoyed those parts, but maybe if you moved, I guess, Kaladin's arc in this to a separate book, I think that's about as vague as I can get without spoiling anything. We could have
Yeah,
given more screen time to Dalinar, right?
yeah,
Because really, it was supposed to be Dalinar versus Odium. And I was kind of wondering about how that was going to play out because I know previous to the launch, I know Sanderson had made some comments about how each book has its flashbacks on certain characters, and there's going to be Zeth in this one. Is kind of curious. Well, how's that going to work? We know it's set up as a thing between Dalinar and Odium. So how does the Zeth flashback work in that? So definitely not as much time with Dalinar as we would have otherwise liked. Um,
right.
but definitely, I think without saying how it ended, I thought the ending set it up really well for the second arc, if not the ending we expected.
It did, yeah, and I was definitely while I understand why he ended it that way, and it does set it up really well. You're absolutely correct. It definitely left a lot to be desired, I think.
Yeah, you're definitely not the only one that has felt that way. And I think I'm pretty sure you watched my review, but I'm pretty sure I said in that
Mhm.
I knew this wasn't the end of the Stormlight Archive, so I did not expect to have all my questions answered. I expect there to be things I still want to know, well, what's happening here? Because I
Right.
knew it wasn't the end. I kind of went into that with that expectation. And not necessarily with your review, but some other reviews I've watched, and I've watched a couple of them now. I kind of feel like some people were expecting everything to be wrapped up.
Yeah,
And
right.
I'm thinking, well, Sanderson's always been clear this is a two arc story, that this isn't the end. This is only the halfway point. So I
Mhm.
went into it not expecting anything to be wrapped up because, yeah, we're only halfway through, right?
Yeah. I think part of it is I feel like early on, like maybe a year or two ago when he was talking about this book, it I got the feeling like he was going to be ending the story for these characters for the most part. I mean, they would still be around in the next arc, right?
Yeah,
But they wouldn't be the primary characters. I got the feeling that we would be focusing on a new set of characters that are being helped along by the current set of characters. So the current set of characters would take more of a backstage to the newer characters in the second
right,
arc. And so I was kind of hoping that we would get a little bit more wrapped up for these
right.
characters in this book.
I suspect we will see some new characters in the second arc. Who they are, I don't know.
Yeah.
And how they get there, I don't know. I know there's definitely two characters which I know are for sure coming back in the second arc, just with the way it was set up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And we'll save that for the spoiler chat.
Yeah.
But definitely, I think there's definitely some characters coming back there. Um, without saying who, I have a feeling some characters who we think might not be coming back will be,
Yeah.
just because Sanderson's not known for taking people out of stories. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah.
And I hesitate to say more in the non-spoiler section, but I kind of get that feeling as well. So we'll kind of see how that ends up going out. If you've read, just as a great example of that, if you've read the previous books, we know there was a point where Yasna was presumed dead, but
Hmm.
she came
Right.
back.
Yep.
This is what Sanderson does. He's not known for knocking characters out and never bringing them back. He doesn't like to do that. I admit I'm a Sanderson nerd. I've said it. I love his works. I sometimes gush about it, but sometimes I wish, I kind of wish he did do that. At the same time, I don't want to see it happen to my favorite characters.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's just that knife in your favorite character is one of those things that makes you go, oh, but at the same time, love the storytelling, right?
Right.
So, I mean, who knows what's going to happen there? And I got a feeling we might have some things change there where we think they're going the other way. There's definitely a lot of really good twists in this one. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. There definitely are. Yeah. There were for sure some things that I didn't see coming
Yeah.
that that and that maybe, I mean, some of them maybe I should have seen coming, but I didn't. And
Yeah,
so,
there were some in there that I was like, how did I not know this? And I mentioned that
yeah.
in the vlog series that I'm doing. I can't remember if it was the second episode or not, but I'm pretty sure there's some parts that are like, how did I not see this coming? I should have known this. I know I should have known this, but somehow I didn't know this. How
You've
did I
only
not know
released
this?
one episode so far, right?
So far, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm kind of
Okay.
spacing them
I
out. I'm
was
putting
going to
one
say
in.
I didn't see
Yeah.
any more from you.
Yeah, I've got
So
one
that's
I'm going to be putting out in February and another one in March. I want to space it out because I know there are people still reading this, and this vlog series that I'm doing is filled with spoilers.
oh yeah.
So I don't want I want to give people time to read it as they watch it, right? So
Right.
episode 2 will be coming out sometime in February and then again in March. So we'll see how that goes and whether people agree with me on some of my first impressions there. One thing I will say about Sanderson is I give him kudos for some of the things he's trying to do, even if they were executed poorly or not so great.
Mhm.
I think me and you have talked a little bit about this. One of those things is the LGBTQ relationships
Mhm.
that he's putting in there.
Mhm.
So that's something I kind of give him kudos to. Great. I'm glad you're trying.
Oh yeah.
It didn't
I
feel
wholeheartedly
natural.
applaud him for that because that's not in his wheelhouse at all. So that,
No,
yeah, totally.
no, not
Yeah.
at all. It absolutely feels, and just with the characters involved with that, they even and I think I mentioned as well, they kind of come across as being like kind of nervous expressing this relationship. And I honestly wonder, is Sanderson having a little bit of nervousness writing that in there because he's not really sure how to effectively approach this?
Yeah.
And is that coming across in the way he writes the characters?
Yeah. I really think he handled it well though, because and I don't know if he went into the book to write it this way, but in actuality, in real life, it's no different than a heterosexual relationship.
Yeah.
It's no different than a male female romance.
Yep.
I mean, everybody experiences the same emotions. It's just a matter of, instead of a
Yeah.
man, a woman. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he did it well, and I don't know if he went into the book intending to write it from that perspective, but if he did, it executed well, I think.
Yeah, I think he definitely put a positive, like the presentation was in the positive light. That
Right.
much I could absolutely say, and I think that that is great. But if we look at like Adolin and Shalon's relationship,
Hmm.
right? That's how it should feel with these other characters, and it just
Hmm.
doesn't feel that way, right? That's
Yeah.
how
Right.
that's what. And I've read books where there's been really great representation, and those characters' relationships are just presented as the norm.
Hmm.
And just flows really well with it, kind of like Shalon and Adolin's relationship do. It's great. He's great at writing those heterosexual relationships, not so good at anything outside of that purview. But
Right.
as I mentioned, I think that kind of comes from his religious background, something I'm very, very familiar with. I
Oh
knew
yeah.
you were
Definitely.
saying you grew up in southern Utah, so you've
I'm
been
very
around
familiar
that
with it
culture.
too.
I lived
Yep.
it, so so I definitely know understand that culture. I think that maybe comes with some of his struggles with writing that in the same way he might a heterosexual relationship. So that for me
Hmm.
was a bit of a drawback in terms of how you're presenting it in a positive light, but it doesn't come across as natural as I feel like it should. Right?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Right? And then the whole therapy thing, I think both you and me have talked about that. Was just Again, it's one of those things. I love that he's putting the mental health issues in there. Like it's fantastic. He represents those issues very well. He doesn't represent the, treatment side of it very well, right?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
It's all
Yeah,
good.
no, you're absolutely right. I like the way that you differentiated that. He represents he represents the existence of it well, and pretty much how it works. He represents it really well, but yeah, the therapy side of it not so much. I like how you differentiated those because I think that's important too. Yeah,
Yeah, that to me, I feel is very important to separate those two aspects of it, because I've seen some comments like, "Oh, he's representing this terribly," and they're kind of merging the representation of the mental health
right,
with the treatment side of it into one thing, and they're not the same thing. And for me, at least, and I've talked about this a little bit, is Kaladin's mental health struggles. Those are things that I've dealt with personally. Granted, I'm not a war veteran that found himself at the end of an honor chasm, but I've been there. I've dealt with that kind of, those kinds of feelings in my own life. And so when I see that represented in Kaladin, it's something that I could relate to very well. And
right,
for me, knowing what it's like, seeing that represented, I feel like I'm in a place where I can say that was done well or not. I think he did it really well.
yeah,
I just wish the therapy side of things worked better.
yeah.
uh,
I
but
agree.
I will say the one character that was
I'm
involved
still
with
here,
this.
by the way.
Okay, I will say we could go into who was involved in what in the spoiler side of things, but I do believe the character involved with that. I think, and I'll get into more detail later, but I think it was a choice that makes sense, and I'll explain that in the spoiler side of things.
Hmm.
Because some people are saying it made no sense, but to me it
Mm,
did. And I'll
yeah,
kind of get into that more in the spoiler side of things. But that was definitely an aspect that I think was a drawback for a lot. One thing I've also heard is that the spiritual realm events, going back
right.
and seeing a lot of the history, some reviews I've seen have said, "We know all this already. Why are you telling us?" I'd like to hear your thoughts on how you felt about that, because I love kind of getting more details of it, even though it's stuff I had heard before, kind of getting more details. I love that. What about for you?
Yeah, I liked it to a point. I do feel like a little bit too much time was spent in the spiritual realm. Um, I thought it was cool, and it directly pertained to what we were learning about this world, and um, kind of wrapping up character stories and everything. So it definitely pertained. But I do wish we'd spent a little bit less time in the spiritual realm. Even Shadesmar, I know, especially in Rhythm of War, we spent so much time in Shadesmar, and I'm like, oh, can we get back to Roshar? And in this book, I feel like it was just the right amount of Shadesmar, but a little too much spiritual realm. But I did enjoy a lot of the things we learned in the spiritual realm, especially seeing how connections are made and learning some of the I won't get into spoilers here, but learning some of the lies that have come before. I'll just put it that way.
No, fair enough. One thing I really loved learning within that is more about the origins and how people came to be on Roshar to begin with. That I like I knew the people were not inherently natural born element of the world to begin with. I knew where they came from to begin with, but learning more a little bit more about the details of the events that led to that, I really enjoyed that. And
Yeah,
I really hope that we get a book series about that initial event at some point.
yeah,
Like like
that might be cool. Yeah,
that's something I would like to see. So here's hoping at some point we get it. I don't actually know if there's any plans to do that.
yeah,
But I would love to see a series on that because that would be fun. That'd
yeah.
be a lot of fun.
I have a sneaking suspicion that there might be some correlation between that and um, the story that he's planning to write for the Dragonsteel novel when it comes out. Whenever that
Yeah,
is.
wouldn't surprise me, but I do know. Have you read Dragonsteel Prime?
I haven't. No. I have it on my Kindle, but I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, I know that takes place on the world of Violen. Uh,
Yeah.
so
Right.
and I know that's a completely different world and a different system than the Rosharan
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
So
And then
and
the one they left was at well again I don't want to, but
right,
Asher or Ashen or something like that.
Ashen, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's as well established within Stormlight Archive, there are three habitable worlds within the Rosharan system. There's
Yeah.
Ashen, there's Roshar, and there's Braze.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So it'll be I'm looking forward to seeing more stuff on Ashen and Braze in the next arc, and I suspect we will,
Yeah.
just based
Yeah.
on how
You're
some of
right.
it ended. So that's going to be an interesting. Speaking of which, and again, we'll save it for the spoiler section, but I know for sure there's one character coming back in the next arc for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, right? So that will be interesting to see, and I really hope that we get something going on there on those worlds, and it's not just left there and then referenced again, because that
Yeah.
would be a lot of fun. There's one thing I could love about the Stormlight Archive is it's the first set of books that really gets into the ultimate realms of Shadesmar, of
Yeah.
the spiritual realm. None of the other Cosmere books has really gotten into that, and I don't know if it ever will. I'm suspect probably, particularly with Mistborn, as we go into the next eras. But I it's the only one that has those details, and the world building in this set of books is just incredible, like hands down incredible. I will want, without spoilers, what would you say is the best part of this book?
Oh, wow. Um,
So we talk criticisms all day, but I want to know the best part from you.
yeah, for me, I feel like the most exciting parts for me was sorry, not the oh the battles that Adolin was in. I can't remember the name of the city
Yes,
right now, but yeah, trying to defend that city and
Thelena, I think.
what's that?
I think it was Thelena.
Yeah, Thelena, thank you. Yeah, trying to defend Thelena. That was some epic action right there.
Oh, just some I crazy action on there. I think this is where the book where Adolin really comes into his character well,
Yeah.
and that those battles were just crazy, better than any other battle
Hmm.
within this book. But yeah, some of those are pretty awesome, and just wow. And one of the aspects I really like is we started to see Shalon come more into her powers.
Yeah, yeah, that was cool too.
With her light weaving and all that kind of stuff. What's really actually interesting is I'm pretty sure this isn't a spoiler because I'm pretty sure this was established by Rhythm of War. But the fact that Shalon has two Spren, not one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We got a very little bit of that at
Yeah,
the end of Rhythm of War, but
yeah.
yeah, it was there. Yeah,
That to me is just really interesting. It kind of makes me wonder how is this going to develop as the next arc continues?
yeah,
Because as we know, it well established in the Stormlight Archive canon is Knights Radiants have one Spren, which gives them their power. So what happens when you have two?
right.
And how is this going to evolve? And speaking of Spren, there's another character I want to talk about in the spoilers uh, with their Spren as well. But that is a fascinating aspect to me. Is of course we got Pattern, of course, and Testament, which is the second Spren of Shalon. But
Right.
nothing has come out as far as that being any more than like just the sidekick to Pattern and
Mhm.
Shalon. There's got to be more to that, and I you have any theories about that?
I don't accept that possibly. Um, well, I I was thinking that maybe she has um oh two orders, but not I'm not thinking like not just light weaving, but maybe something else, you know.
That's what I'm thinking as well.
But then it's hard to say because Testament is technically still kind of a dead eye at this point, like not totally, but still
That
she's
that's where some of my theories come in, which we're going to get into in non
okay.
spoilers.
All right, yeah,
Uh, but yeah, I mean that's something it's kind of left it open, like what's happening with this
yeah.
and where's this going to go, and that is something that I'm really looking forward to seeing develop more, and I hope that it is developed more,
I hope
and
it
I
is
also
too.
hope that that Sanderson kind of, you know, watches some of the reviews and understands where some of the critique is coming from to avoid that in the next arc. And one of the things I kind of been feeling as well is Sanderson's gotten to the point where he's just massive, and I can't imagine the pressure on him to produce something that his fans are going to love and not to disappoint them. But I feel like he's raised the bar so high that
Yeah.
it can be hard for him to hit that bar sometimes. And I think that's part of what happened with this. He's like, I want to make this an awesome book, and
Hmm.
then being hyper focused on that kind of missed that bar, like he's shooting for the moon but just missed, right? And I feel like maybe that's a little bit of what happened here, because I know, yeah, the fan base isn't too happy with a lot of this, at least half of them from what I've
Yeah.
seen. uh,
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. And he
hey,
even
Epic,
hey,
thanks
there's
for joining
Epic.
us.
Yay! Good to
We're,
see you, man.
good to see you here, but be warned, we'll be getting into spoilers in a few minutes, buddy. But
Um,
yeah, that's tough. I mean, I can't imagine the kind of pressure that would be under as someone who's elevated to the point where he is now, right?
yeah, for sure. Well, and even he said, this would either make or break his popularity or his career or whatever.
Yeah,
He knew the stakes were high with this
yeah,
one, and he I think he uh kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy when he made that statement is
yeah,
he knew that it was going to be divisive.
yeah. I
So
feel like I'm a big time Sanderson fanboy. Fully admit it. For me, I think it's going to take a lot more than one, slightly one little bit less than what we've come to expect of him to really get me off the Sanderson bandwagon, so to speak. One
mhm.
thing I never want to do is write an author off for one bad book. And I'll say, as much as I love Sanderson, I've been critical. I mean, White Sands, terrible. Don't read it. Yeah, just as an example. Yes, it's in the Cosmere. If you really want to read all the Cosmere, I guess you could read it. But in my opinion, not great at all. Not worth the read. So
I think it gets a bad rap. It's definitely not the best Cosmere
yeah,
book. It
no,
really isn't. But I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed, and I'll be curious to see what he does with the prose version because he's
that's
right.
something I might check out, to be honest. Just because I'm
Yeah,
hoping that I'm gonna like that a lot more than the graphic novel. I just felt the magic system on that was like, meh. And the overall story and writing, I'm like, I don't understand what the purpose of any of this is or what this is all
yeah,
about. And even with things like Warbreaker, I had a lot of criticisms about the magic system there. So as
yeah,
much as a fan as I am, I feel like I'm somebody who could also say, hey, this isn't working. Like this is
yeah.
poor execution on this part, which is, I don't want to be one of those people like, oh, Drew will never say anything bad about Sanderson. He loves Sanderson too much. And I do love Sanderson, but I'll definitely, when something doesn't work, I'm going to say it. Like
Yeah.
I commented on the things I felt didn't work in this book on my review as well. So I never want to fall into that trap of never having anything bad to say about any author,
Oh
because
yeah.
sometimes people do, admittedly. Uh, but we're about the half hour mark, so I'm thinking let's get a little more into spoilers, because that's where the really fun and entertainment is. So be warned, this is the point where we are getting into spoilers about this book. So if you haven't read it, you've been warned. You had 30 minutes to listen without being spoiled.
Yep. And
Let's
here we
here we go.
go.
Do you think some of the bad things are setups for crazy stuff in future books? Quite possibly.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised for sure. Yeah.
It's all
It's
good. Just go back and watch the 30 minutes without
I epic.
spoilers there, buddy. Bye.
Love you, man.
Yeah. So I briefly touched on some theories about the spread and characters. A
Yes.
Adolin,
Uh-huh.
I'm convinced he is a Radiant, and
Oh, I am too.
he was he was battling the Unmade, I believe it was one of the Unmade guys, and he
Yeah.
pointed out, "I know what you are," and I know
Yeah.
that his spren Maya is
Yes.
it was a Deadeye spren, which basically is honor blade, but she's kind of coming out of being a Deadeye,
She is. And I have a feeling she's just waiting for him to say the right words.
yeah, I
I
just have a
really
feeling, and
do.
I don't think Maya even realizes she's waiting because she's still fully recovering.
Yeah.
She's recovered a lot, and I
Yeah.
think the same thing's going to happen with Testament eventually.
Yeah, oh, I do too. Yeah, I get that feeling as well. And that will be really interesting because then we'll find out. Like, do you have any theories of if Shalon is a what would we call her, a dual radiant or a double radiant, or what? Do you have any idea what her other radiant skill might be?
I don't think she's. I don't think the term's been set for what that's called yet in the series, but it's going to come out in the second arc. I'm convinced of that. As for what she might be, I would not be surprised she became an Else caller.
Mm, I could see that. Yeah.
Because she's already traveling between realms a lot as it is.
Yeah, and she's trapped in one right now.
Yeah, exactly. She's trapped in
So she needs a
Chase
way
Mark.
out.
Yeah, exactly. And that would not surprise me if she became an Else caller as well. And
Yeah,
as was established, there's a 10-year, Sanderson already said many times there's a 10-year gap between books. And now it makes sense why there is.
yeah,
Because we know there's like this time bubble around Roshar now.
yeah, yeah.
It's
That
slowing
that's
time down. And then said it's going to take you at least a decade to get back
yeah,
when speaking to Shalon. So it's where's Adolin going to be at that point? 10 years without his wife. Is he going to move on?
yeah,
Assume she's dead? Is she going to come back to find Adolin's married somebody else?
yeah. I wondered that myself. Yeah, because that time dilation is going to be quite interesting to see how he pulls that off. But yeah, Elf color that could definitely be a thing. And so here's my thing too, because uh even though the Oath Pact has kind of been reformed, the only Stormlight available on Roshar now is Voidlight.
Yeah.
And so, if she does become a dual radiant, is that other side of her going to only work with Voidlight? Because she can't access Stormlight now unless that changes in that 10-year gap.
Yeah, either something's going to change or all Radiants will have to serve Odium, who is now Retribution.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't like the sound of that, but I guess maybe, yeah. Yeah.
that that was a twist I wasn't expecting
Yeah, I wasn't
is
either.
Honor and Odium joining to become Retribution. Like that was just like,
Yeah.
whoa.
And I kind of that's one thing that I really felt kind of let down by was it seemed like Sanderson was just building and building and building toward Dalinar
Yeah.
taking on the mantle of honor, and then he gives it up, and we're like, what? Like I felt kind of let down. I understand why, because if two gods fight, it's going to destroy the planet. I get that, but I didn't like that. I was really disappointed. I wanted Dalinar to be honored. Gosh dang it!
I think we all did, honestly. And I yeah, there was that bit of letdown, but at the same time, I'm like, whoa, I love it when there's a twist thrown in there that you just
Yeah,
were not expecting.
yeah.
So for me, it's like, dang, he didn't become honor, but damn. Now Taravangians honor and odium.
Yeah.
Like it's just one of those twisted thrown at you. You're like, whoa, what's going on there, right? And
Hmm.
I know some people criticized Gavinor for being Odium's champion,
Hmm.
but I gotta say, in a way, I think it makes sense because Dalinar had already been basically tortured in his own soul for his actions that ended in his wife's death. So to face him with another prospect of killing a loved family member was kind of preying on his tortured past for killing a family member, someone he cared deeply for. And from that perspective, I think Odium was really preying on that, and that's why he set it up
Oh,
that
yeah.
way. So some are like, why would you choose Gavin? It's like, well, actually, if you think about the character's past in history, it almost kind of makes sense that Odium would manipulate it that way.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense there. Admittedly, for most of their trip through the spiritual realm, I was thinking, why is Gaviner here? This kid doesn't belong in this story. What's he doing here? Yeah, we know he
Hmm.
exists, but does he really need to be in the story? And how that swap happened when Navani left the spiritual realm with what she thought was Gavinar.
Hmm.
I'm not sure how I feel about that. Yes, light
Yeah.
weaving's been well established. Yes, these things can be done, but was it an easy out to set it up that way? Would it have been better if somehow Navani got tossed out of the spiritual realm, separated from Gavinor, and kept separate from Dalinar? That
I
might have
think
made
I
a
would
little
have
more
preferred
sense.
that.
Yeah, that would have made more sense to establish that, I think, instead of just a swap. Oh, we think Gavinor's safe. You know, that's just something that I have. But the way the swap happened was probably something I would have loved to talk about in my review, but I wanted to keep it spoiler free. That I don't think that worked too well. But the spiritual realm, a lot of interesting stuff there.
Yeah. Yeah. Are we allowed to talk all Cosmere spoilers, or do we have to keep it
Yeah, let's
to?
go for it.
Okay.
All
The
Cosmere spoilers.
the only reason I brought that up is because when the unification happened and he became Retribution, that got me to thinking about Harmony.
Ah, yes.
And I'm wondering, like, is that the destiny of all of these shards at some point, all the shards of Adonalsium to eventually, I'm guessing that they will reunify to reform Adonalsium, but at but along the way, it seems to be kind of a very rocky road. In Mistborn,
Oh
he
gosh,
becomes Harmony, and then you've got Retribution now in Stormlight.
I
I don't
didn't
know.
even
Am
think
I
of that.
grasping at
I
straws?
no, I actually like that theory. Um, just based on what you said, the fact that honor and odium fuse to become one,
Hmm.
that sets a precedent that this thing can happen.
Right.
So I like your theory, and yeah, I can now that you explain that, I can see that happening eventually.
Yeah.
Whether that's in a whole different series or whether it's in this series particularly, we're gonna have to wait and see.
Yeah. I
I
imagine it's probably 20 years down the road as far as books go, but
if not more than that. I mean, I don't think we're getting Stormlight 6 to like 2033.
oh, I know.
Yeah, it's that's a great theory. I'll tell you one thing that really threw me off was Kaladin becoming a herald.
Yeah.
I
For
did
me
not
too. I
expect
did
that.
not see that coming.
Uh, in a way, it's not surprising, but did I expect it to happen in this book? Not by a long shot.
Yeah.
And
I
this is
I
how we
knew
know Kaladin's
something was
coming back.
happening with the wind, but because he had such a strong bond with the wind, I knew something was happening, but I didn't think it was going to be that.
See, the wind, that's an interesting one because I mean, it doesn't surprise me that the wind has a voice in this world, but the wind being a character wasn't really a thing until this book.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a new introduction there. I just thought it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. But
Yeah.
I didn't really think much on it. But I wonder how that's going to evolve. And then of course Kaladin's whole quest with Zeth. Take out the therapy side, and it would have improved that quest, right? Because
Yeah.
that kind of gets into what I was saying earlier about how I think the character who is providing that made sense. Now, how it was executed is a whole nother matter. The reason I say that, I think Kaladin taking on that role of therapist after retiring from the military and the battle or war, whatever you want to call it at this point, someone who's already experienced that can really have empathy with the people they're trying to help. So
Yeah,
in that sense, I think that could really make sense as far as that characters are changing. Saying, "Hey, I've been there. I understand what you're going through." That's a
right.
great thing. The trick is, can you execute it well?
Yeah,
And
right.
I think there's been a lot of great criticisms about that, saying this kind of therapy, the battle shock, PTSD, this is not something that's cured in 10 days.
Right.
And and you're trying to give therapy to a god who's been suffering mental illness for thousands of years. You're not going to cure that in one day.
Yeah,
And I think that's a very valid criticism.
yeah.
You know, I'm wondering if maybe to put the whole therapy in, maybe it would have been better if there were scenes where Kaladin was seeing someone who was becoming a therapist. And like you said, come up with a different word. But I think Wit gave them that word.
hmm
So we just kind of went with it.
Right.
But it's not like he really knew what it was. It's,
Yeah, that's true. You make a good point. And I really get I really get the feeling like I kind of wonder if Earth in some way, shape, or form is a planet in the Cosmere. And I wonder if like, Wit knows all the lingo from Earth, and so he's like feeding that in little baby pieces to different people. I don't know. I don't know.
I
Wit's an
my
interesting
theory,
one.
yeah. My theory is that the if any world's going to be Earth-like, it's going to be Scadrial.
Yeah, I could see
Because
that
that's
because
the
it
only world
already
that
is kind of Earth-like
yeah,
in
it's
a
the
lot
only
of
world
ways.
that's really
Yeah,
evolving economically,
you make a
socially,
good point.
technologically. And so my suspicion is that Wit got that word from Scadrial. I mean, we
Yeah,
know at the end when he shifts himself to Scadrial, it already referenced that he wound up on a planet with like railroads and cars and guns and stuff like that, right?
yeah,
My first thought is I actually found that kind of funny the way Sanderson mentioned that, as if he's trying to say on a world with this without telling you it's Scadrial. And anybody who's familiar with the Cosmere, so it's like that's Scadrial.
yeah, right.
Right? I mean, come on. No, nobody's surprised that he ended up on Scadrial at this point. Just say he ended up on Scadrial. Like, you don't need to try and pretend that maybe it isn't. We all know where he is,
Yeah, yeah, totally.
right? So that was just kind of funny. Wit.
Yeah.
Now, there's a character I want to know more about him. We know
Oh,
he
me too.
originated on Yolen, but
hmm
or rather, the first point in the Cosmere where we see him as a character is on Yolen from Dragonsteel.
Right. Yeah.
But did he actually originate there? I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, we've gotten so many conflicting reports on Wit. I mean, I'm talk about the pinnacle of an unreliable narrator, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. We know nothing about Wit except what he absolutely wants us to know. And like so okay, so that scene in the book where he runs across oh, what's her name, the lady in the wheelchair, um
I yeah, I'm
from
drawing a blank
from
too.
from Don Shard. Well, anyway, we find out that he's
Yes, I know who you're
also
speaking to. So
he's also a holder. Oh, Risen. That's it,
yes.
Risen. Yeah. So and we find out that he's actually one of the Dawn Shard holders. I'm like, wait, what? Huh? Huh?
Well,
And then
exactly.
I'm like, okay, so that's a new revelation.
No kidding. And I have to say, Yezna and Wit being together as a couple, that just threw me off. I'm like, wait, what?
That was a little
Seriously?
weird. That was definitely a little
Like,
weird.
when
Yeah.
did this happen? I mean, this
Mhm.
book is there's no time jump in this book, and
Yeah.
suddenly they're a couple. Like, when did
Yeah.
that happen?
And then she writes him a Dear John letter. It's like, okay, all right. So so now she's breaking up with him, and that whole thing was weird too. Yeah,
I mean, you probably could have taken that out. It would have made no difference to the story.
yeah, it wouldn't have made any
Just
difference.
I
Just
will say, and with the whole Kaladin Zeph storyline, well, you could basically take that out, and it really wouldn't have changed much with this
yeah,
story. I think how he wrapped that up in it I loved how he wrapped that up with Kaladin becoming a herald. I thought that was
Yeah,
really good,
yeah,
which I think is a very important part of this story as a whole.
yeah.
I just wish he'd be able to work that in without taking up so much page time on something that didn't feel so relevant to the overall plot.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I think if he had spent more time on Kaladin's journey to actually becoming the Herald, that would have made a much more compelling story. Not
Definitely.
that Zeth isn't cool, but I was kind of bored by some of the long drawn out stuff, and um
I, I love learning more about him, but I think that he deserves
sure.
his own book for that purpose,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
just
I think so.
they don't work with. It's really too bad he didn't focus more on Dalinar in this one because that was supposed to be
Mhm,
the epitome. I mean, I did give it a 4 out of 5, but mainly probably
mhm.
more so because I absolutely love the Stormlight world
Sure.
than anything
I
else, to
get
be
that.
completely honest. But man, I wish he'd spent more time on Dalinar on that. And
Yeah.
I will say one thing though, shifting a little bit here, Adolin's battle with the Thunderclast and the Unmade in the
Oh,
end.
wow. Yeah, when the Thunderclast first came down, I was like, "Oh man, there goes Adolin. He's gone."
Yeah,
And I
that
was expecting some character deaths in the book. And when I saw that, I'm like, "There's no way that Adolin survived that." And then in the next couple of chapters, we find out he did. I'm like, "Wait, what? He actually
lost his
survived that?"
foot,
Yeah, lost his foot. Yeah.
but he came back.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
When did these armor spren show up and start talking to people? Like that weirded me out.
Yeah, that was I was not expecting that.
Like
Yeah.
I got to us that kind of weirded me out when I read them. Like and they just have like these little I don't know, they're like one word speaking. Like
Yeah.
that's it. They only say one word. But when did this happen? At no point preceding this book had it ever been established that armor spread had any ability to communicate whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, surprisingly exists not really. Everything has a spread in this world. But
Yeah.
like
Maybe,
since when do
maybe
they
maybe
talk?
at this point in the story, the different realms are bleeding through so much into each other that maybe they're able to do more than they were before.
That's a possibility.
I don't
But
know.
it's weird. I mean, I love how Adolin his shard blades came back to him.
Yeah.
That's something that makes sense in the world to me. Like they're his shard blades, he's bonded to him. It makes sense that they came back to him in a shard plate, right? But
Yeah.
just the whole talking armor spread was just weird to me. Like whatever, it's a nitpick at this point. It was just weird, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking maybe Dalinar though might come back as a herald as well.
You know,
I mean, we
maybe,
know at the end
but
Kaladin, we know Kaladin's become a herald, but he basically had to die and go to Ashen for that to
yeah.
happen.
But
So,
Dalinar's soul is currently captive to Odium.
but will he
Or
break free?
or or or
How?
a fraction of his soul is anyway.
Well, we all know Kaladin will come to the rescue, just like he always has, right?
Yeah, probably so. You're probably right there. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see how that ends up. Either that, or it'll be like a combination of Adolin, Kaladin, and Shallan.
Yeah.
I will say though, Shallan's one of my favorite characters.
Yeah. I
Like
I
she's
really like Shallan. Kaladin's my favorite. I'd never really liked Adolin, to be honest. Like so I'll be honest with you secretly, when that Thunder class landed on him, I was like, "Oh good, now she can get with Kaladin." But I feel bad because I mean Adolin did take a huge step up in this book. He
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 really
really
did, yeah.
he really became a much better character in this book, in my opinion. He's no longer just the preppy pretty boy. He's actually got some character
The
development.
preppy pretty boy obsessed with fashion, like
Yeah.
speaking of characters that make your eyes roll, I don't know
Oh
if you saw
God,
my
I know,
short on that. Like, oh, shut up, Nightblood. Like
right?
that sword is just annoying. Like, let's be honest, just annoying
Yeah.
as heck. At one point, it's like, ooh, kill some evil. It's like, oh my god, shut up.
Yeah.
Oh, one person commented on it's like, how could you be annoyed with a character that has less speaking lines than the wind? And it's like, I just basically ignored it. It's like, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But still, it's like, oh my god, shut up. Honestly, Nightblood annoyed me in Warbreaker.
Yeah. I don't
Right?
know. I liked him in Warbreaker. and I was pretty surprised when he first showed up in Rashar. But then, the more I found out, of course, it made sense. But
Yeah, speaking of things
he's
showing
not
up on
bad, but he
Roshar,
can be annoying. He's kind of
so
like a Jar
many.
Jar Binks.
Yeah, basically. So many connections from other Cosmere worlds. We're talking about Nightblood. That's one of them from
Yeah.
Warbreaker. But we got the Sions making an appearance now,
Yep.
right? And speaking of that, Moash in one of those interludes, like, oh my gosh, the guy became Iron Eyes. Like, holy crap.
I
That's like,
know.
whoa.
Well, and a whole different kind of Iron Eyes too,
Yeah.
because it's like
I want to know
instead
what's
of
happening to him. Like, what?
instead of just metal, it's like crystal
Yeah,
embedded through his eyes. And I'm like, what's going on with that?
I know, right?
That's something completely new.
Like, I really hope we get some expansion on that.
Yeah.
Moash is one of those characters that seems to drop in from time to time. Where's he going with this character?
Yeah, I'm wondering that as well.
Because he just kind of drops in, and now he's got these spikes through his eyes. And the
Yeah.
first thing you're thinking is like Inquisitor from Scadrial,
Right. Yeah.
right? But where's he going with this? Like, don't do that and then not have him play a big role. So I really hope he plays a much bigger role in the second arc.
Yeah, I hope he does too, because he's definitely a worthy opponent. In fact, I think it would have been cool if he had been the big bad um as opposed
Taravangian.
to Taravangian, because I still don't care for Taravangian. I mean, that character art makes sense, but I still don't like him.
No, I'm pretty meh on Taravangian myself. He's an interesting character for sure.
Yeah.
I want to know what led him to being going to the Night Watcher, I think it was, and his curse of being like stupid and intelligent
Oh yeah, yeah.
cycling. I would be in. That's something I'd be interested to know more about him. Is what led him to doing that in the first place. We know why Dalinar went, but I also want to know more about the Night Watcher, who did not
Yeah.
make an appearance in this book. But nevertheless, it's one of those. I should probably do a video on that. The most mysterious characters in sci-fi and fantasy, and the Night Watcher's got to be one of them. Who is the
Yeah.
Night Watcher?
So, well, now wait, didn't we get like a few lines here and there from the Night Watcher, because it wasn't Bawado Mishram the Night Watcher's sister?
I think there's some reference to that, but we don't know a whole lot about the Night Watcher.
Okay, I thought there were a couple points where, oh no, it was the the other night. There was
So
Bawado Mishram, and then the other one that Shalon was talking with to try
right,
and find the prison. It was her that we heard
Rays?
dialogue from. What?
Was it Rays? No,
No,
no, it wasn't Rays.
no, it
No,
was one of the other
right.
unmade. Starts with an S, but I can't remember.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about, and I'm
Yeah,
drawing a blank too.
she was the one that was trying to get them to release Bawada Mishram from the
Shatnot.
prison. Shawnat, yes, that's it.
Yes,
Yeah.
Shatnot. Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
I was mixing her up with the Night Watcher, but you're right.
Speaking of which, what's going on with Ba'adel Mishram?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Like I actually felt sympathy for her in this book, because like it feels like she was it feels like she was the spirit that was possessing the singers,
yeah,
and then she was imprisoned to prevent a war with Odium, as opposed to being imprisoned for actually being a bad spirit, or I don't know. I felt sympathy for her in this
yeah.
book.
I think a lot of people are let down with her being released by Shalon and Renarin and Verlaine and all them,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of buildup to Mishram being the only one that can effectively be a threat to Odium.
Yeah,
But my thinking on that is, and I can see why people are really disappointed in that build up and execution. But my theory is that was put in there because that's going to play a bigger role in the second arc.
oh, it has to. I hope it
But
does.
now we have Retribution, who's clearly going to be more powerful than Ba'edo Mishram ever was. So the question is, what happens there? And one theory is maybe Kaladin, returning as a herald, joins
Hmm.
forces with Ba Mishram in order to fight Retribution.
Right.
There's a theory that might be worth exploring. Who knows, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Because you can't build up for that and never return to it. That would be bad. So,
Yeah.
on the off chance, Brandon, if you ever watch this on the off chance, don't do that.
Right.
Yeah, but somehow I don't think he'd ever watch my videos. But you never know.
You never know.
You
Yeah.
never know. Like exactly. That
Yeah.
that'd be an interesting plot execution. Like, see where that goes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's some authors that do watch other people's videos. I know Jenny Wirtz watches a bunch of videos from different people and stuff. So
Oh, that's always a good thing.
yeah. So I was curious. I don't know if you picked this up, but during the sections where we were following Kaladin and Zeph to the different temples, for me, I could totally see Brandon's video game obsession coming through on that because it felt like a video game. We're going to these different places
Yes.
and
The next
battling
big
these
boss,
guys.
yeah. I've heard some people reference that. I didn't pick up on it personally when reading it, but then I'm not never really been big on playing video games. It's just not
Okay,
something I've
yeah,
done. But I've heard some people reference it like that. I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense.
yeah,
Uh, but one thing that, and you'll see this in some of my vlog videos that'll be coming out on this, is I was thinking while doing that, it's like, wait a minute, each of these monasteries effectively has a radiant and had them before
yeah.
even Kaladin started getting his powers. And one of the things I mentioned is that's like I feel like I should have known that. At least at the moment they mentioned they have these blades in the monasteries. I
Yeah.
feel like I should have known that, but for some reason it didn't clue in until we started seeing him basically battle these people. It's like, okay, I feel like I should have known that. What do I like? Is that something you just kind of picked up right away, or did you look back and go, how did I not know that?
Oh, yeah, I definitely felt that way too. Yeah, I didn't quite pick up on it first either. Yeah. Um, it was interesting though how it was executed. I also got, have you watched Avatar: The Last Airbender?
A long time ago. Yeah.
See, I got really
Maybe.
strong Avatar vibes with this book. I'm like, okay, he's going to the Southern Air Temple. He's,
Oh, jeez.
sorry.
No, I,
Yeah.
I love how we have at least in Shin they've got all the monasteries. I think that of the each of the orders of the Knights Radiant, like that's really cool. I think this whole Stonewalker thing. I mean, I see what he's establishing that, but even throughout the whole Stormlight Archive, it's just I don't know. It's just kind of weird to worship stone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is.
And that's something that just I don't know. It's an interesting quirk, not necessarily bad, but it's not something that's like, wow, that's really cool either. It's just a weird quirk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
get
wonder what's
that.
going to happen with Zeph going forward.
Yeah, I don't know because it kind of seems like after this he's kind of back to square one.
Yeah, one thing I will say is some of the conversation between Zeph and Kaladin is, I can honestly say it's also those heartbreaking moments, like when Zeph says, you've helped me realize, and now I'm ready to end it all, kind of thing.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, damn, that hits you right here, right? For
Mhm.
me, at least, you really start to feel it's like, whoa, like
Yeah,
you know, and that's something that kind of hits your heart. Now, Kaladin, it's not a therapist as much as he's trying because Dalinar told him to be. But those moments, like, man, that hurts.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, and Zeph definitely has some trauma in his life for sure.
yeah,
He needs
absolutely.
help, but yeah, Kaladin's not ready to be the one to help. Makes
No,
sense that makes sense from a character arc perspective, but it really needs to be developed better.
yeah,
You know, one thing that I would have liked to see with that is if maybe Kaladin somehow got the help from someone who just one of the doctors or whatever in this world kind of had a little bit of experience with, but there was no real field established in that, and he kind of got help by that. And it's like, we need more of this type of thing for the rest of everybody that under my command. and kind of started to work towards establishing that field of medicine in its
Yeah.
formality. Like that would have been a nice way to bring that around.
Hmm.
But, it's not the way Sanderson did it. Oh well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So what so I was really happy to find out what happened with Sigil,
Yes.
because and I feel like I feel like Sunlit Man probably should have come after this book, to be honest, but it didn't, and that's okay. It was I knew going into this that we would probably find out what happened to Sigil, and I had a see and see I thought his friend was going to get killed, but I liked the way he did it. I really felt like it was good that that he saved his friend by renouncing his oaths.
Yeah.
I thought that was good.
Yeah, it was foreshadowed that that kind of thing would happen. And just hi, Kaya, thanks for joining us. I hope I
I
pronounced your name right there. Did you guys generally like the book? I think I liked it a little bit more than Chas, but I think
Yeah,
I speak for both of us when I say we generally did enjoy the book overall,
absolutely.
and it was a
Yeah.
good read. Yeah, for sure. And that moment though, like when you speak of Joe when he renounced his oath, like everything had been foreshadowed about the Knights Radiance breaking their oaths. I fully expected we would start hearing about this at some point. How it happened, when it happened, I did not expect Dalinar to do that.
Yeah, I
But
didn't
Sigil,
either.
yes. And as we start seeing them breaking their oaths, I start thinking it's like, okay, so is everybody gonna have broken their oaths by the end of this? I'm surprised Yazdan didn't, and Navani didn't, and Shallan didn't.
Right.
Uh, you know,
Zeph
uh,
kind of did because
yeah,
he basically
yeah,
told his friend, you're not the right friend for me. So he kind of broke his oath, but
kind of, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I think the most impactful one was with Sigil. When Dalinar did it, I was like, oh, okay, we've already done this before.
Yep. But
But
on that, like we know Deadeye's Spren could come back. We're
yeah,
seeing
yeah,
that happen with Maya and Adolin's Spren.
yeah.
So while the act of renouncing their oaths creates those Deadeye Spren, so we gotta expect that the Stormfather is going to be in that condition.
Probably. Yeah. I
But
would
it's
imagine you're
yeah,
right.
but it's been established that these Deadeye Spren can come back,
Yeah.
which makes why. So yeah, we're out of Stormlight. It doesn't exist anymore because the Stormfather's gone.
Yeah.
But if Deadeye Spren can come back, are we going to expect to see that resurrection in there? Because he's Sanderson's already established this Spren resurrection show,
Right.
right? So I think we're probably going to see the Stormfather come back. In what way? Because the Stormfather was like part of honor, and honor is now part of
Mhm.
retribution. What's going to happen and how? I think we'll probably see it come back because the Radiants aren't gone. Not everybody
Right.
renounced their oaths.
Yeah, not everybody did.
Right? Which leads me to believe that there's going to be a resurgence of that for the actual final battle, which let's hope he pulls off better than he did in this book. We
Right.
know Kawanen's coming back, right? So we know Shallan's coming back, and Shallan has not renounced her oaths,
Right.
right? We know Navani and Yasna haven't, right?
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I think that somehow the Stormfather is going to break free of Odium. That's my suspicion
Yeah.
and fight him. That's
Oh,
my
yeah.
suspicion.
Yeah, that
Somehow.
that that would be cool. That's a really good theory. And then of course we'll have some new radiants as well at some point. We talked about Adolin.
Yeah.
What do you think about the king uh of Thalen there? Do you think he'll become a radiant?
I didn't really think that much about it till you mentioned it, but I'm thinking yes, now that you mention it.
Yeah, because I mean he's latched on to everything that Adolin was teaching him with the with the game they were playing, and he wanted to be at the front lines to protect his people and stuff like that. I have a feeling he's going to become a radiant.
I wonder if he'll become a key player in the next arc.
Yeah, he
Yeah, and I
could
think
be.
as a general, the fans could agree the Kawanin plot line was not the best.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
that
wasn't.
that seems to be the consensus across even the more positive reviews.
Yeah, I do agree with Kyra that Adelin's plot line was really good. This
Yeah,
in this book. Yeah, it
yeah,
really
just
was. And
love that.
I'll be curious if once he becomes radiant, because I think we're just assuming at this point he will. I
Yeah,
wonder if when he becomes radiant, if if he will grow his foot back. I kind of think not, because you know
personally, I hope not. I
I
hope
hope
not.
not too, because we know with Lopen regrew his arm or whatever. But I think I think Adolin having lost his foot, I think that's a key to him becoming who he needs to be. And if he regrew it, that might kind of defeat all that. I don't know.
That is definitely one other
Oh,
way to see it.
that's an
Yes, the
interesting
unoath, or
theory.
yes, the unoath was mentioned.
That
And yeah, you
was.
may very well be right there about the
Yeah,
unoath.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
entirely
because
possible.
that's true. He hasn't taken oaths, but he's yeah. Okay, I like that theory, Kyra.
Yeah.
That might be a
I wonder if
thing.
they'll, yeah, beyond unoath, I wonder if there'll be another term for it because they didn't call the radiance the oath,
Yeah,
right? So
maybe it'll be the oathless. That oathless kind of sounds cool.
yeah, unoath does too. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
they're definitely the unoath there, especially with the lack of stormlight. So that might become a new thing. And then I wonder if maybe once stormlight comes back, because
yeah,
Sanderson loves his resurrection plots.
yeah,
It's
yeah. He
one thing he
does.
loves, which in a way could be like, "Ugh, resurrection trope. Just kind of roll your eyes."
You know,
But
I was. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah,
I'll
but
let you
with the
finish.
whole resurrection plot, I mean, the unoath works, you know, works for what we set up in this book. But maybe when Stormlight comes back, we'll see that resurgence of radiance. That's what I'm expecting at this
Hmm.
point. Or say when. When Stormlight comes back. 'Cause I honestly think it's going to. Um,
Yeah, yeah. It would have to if it's going to continue to be called the Stormlight Archive, right?
well, yeah, exactly. It's got to
But
be in there somewhere.
I
It'll be a
also
new
kind of wonder
Stormfall.
if in the interim, if they're going to find out a way uh to gain power from other worlds, like investiture from other worlds, because I because we've got the Ghost Blood series coming up
Yep.
now.
That's what I'm probably going to buy those in hardcover, I'll admit,
Are
because
you?
once
Yeah, yeah,
Anderson released a book, I'm buying it.
yeah,
Um, that is a possibility, and we already have established with Moash becoming iron. I mean, say iron eyes, but we know they're like more crystal spikes. But
yeah,
that is clearly not something of Roshar,
yeah,
right? So we're already establishing, these magic systems from other worlds are coming in, which kind of makes me wonder about that. Is the crystal spikes, is that something from Scadro or another world with a similar magic system, but still a little bit different?
yeah,
Because we know on Scadrial it's all metals, right?
yeah.
So yeah, that'd be interesting to see how that develops.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm very curious about the Ghost Bloods because um Master they call him Thetacar, right? Um
Thetacar, yeah, or
y-
Thetacar, yeah.
yeah, which is basically what's his name uh from Mistborn. Oh,
I'm actually re-listening just casually to Mistborn right now. I'm on the second era right now.
oh yeah,
I
the guy that recruited Vin in the first place.
Yeah,
I can't think of his name right now.
Kelsier.
Kelsier, thank you. Yeah, so Thetakar's Kelsier, and it's really interesting because in Mistborn Era 2, Kelsier is basically this uh not quite neutral, but almost he seems to have very honorable intentions. Whereas in Stormlight Archive, he's positioned clearly as an enemy, or at least that's the way he's talked about.
Yeah.
but I see him as chaotic neutral.
Speaking of connections to Mistborn, there were some references to wells of power within this
Yes.
book. And my first thought was the Well of Ascension from
Yeah.
Mistborn,
Right. I
right?
thought that too. Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
thinking,
Exactly.
okay, well, wait, if there's wells of power on Roshar,
Uh
and there's
huh.
wells of powers on Scadrial,
Uh
are
huh.
there wells of power on every Cosmere world?
Yeah. You got to wonder, right? Because at least what I gathered from Mistborn, the Well of Ascension is it- it's essentially a pool of pure investiture,
Yep.
and that's what I gathered from these pools on Roshar as well. So I wonder if it's like, you know, um, deposits of investiture that resulted from the shattering of Adonalsium, or how that works. Um,
I'm thinking they got to be linked somehow.
yeah,
It's, I mean,
maybe it's kind of like the blood of Adonalsiums, or I don't know. That's weird, but
I no, I like that thinking. The blood of Adelnosium. If there's one thing Sanderson has been doing a lot more of as we progress later, is all these little Easter eggs dropping
yeah,
in from other worlds. Now, I don't think he was openly saying this is from this world and just being really in your face about it, but it's a lot less subtle than it has been in previous books.
for sure. Yeah.
Which, especially as we know, the ghost bloods are definitely part of this. Now, here would be a fun theory. Just crazy, throw it out there. What if the Ghost Bloods come to Roshar from Scadrial in the next era and help with the final battle? Like, can you imagine that?
Oh, that would be cool. In fact, I'd be almost shocked if they didn't. I could totally see that happening.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that
because
that would be epic.
I think the in the long haul, the Ghost Bloods are mostly honorable. That's my impression.
Definitely a secret society we don't know a whole
Yeah.
lot
Oh
about.
yeah.
They were first introduced in the Stormlight Archive.
Yeah.
We know they're not from Roshar.
Yeah. Right.
That much we do know. And as you point out, the next era of Mistborn is going to be called the Ghost Bloods. So the question remains: do they originate on Scadrial, or is something happening on Scadrial of significance to the Cosmere with the Ghost Bloods?
hmm
Maybe that series will answer that.
Yeah. Could it could for sure.
Well, thank you for joining us. Good to have you
Hey,
here.
good to see you,
Hello,
man.
hello. And I've had trouble with Sanderson after this. I might try again. You're definitely not the only one.
Yeah.
Sanderson he's one of those authors where people either love him or they really don't like him. I fall into the love him category. And
hmm
as I tell people, if Sanderson's not for you, that's okay. Uh,
hmm
but definitely, I don't know how far into the Cosmere you've gotten, but I always recommend starting with Elantris and Warbreaker to kind of dip your toes into it, and then moving on to the Mistborn.
Yeah.
Stormlight Archive is not a starting point, and I think that's almost universally agreed upon in the fandom that Stormlight Archive is not a starting point for the Cosmere.
Yeah. I would even go so far as to say you could start with Mistborn, but I think it's
Oh, for sure.
preferable if you do either Elantris or Warbreaker to start. But you could start with Mistborn as well.
You definitely could. I usually recommend starting with Elantris or
Yeah.
Warbreaker because right now
Same.
they are standalones, and
Mhm.
before you kind of get into the greater Cosmere, you know, dip your toes in this, see if you like it, if you like the
Mhm.
writing, and then commit to a series read,
Yeah.
right? So, although I would say definitely Elantris over Warbreaker, but for some reason, some people like Warbreaker more, and that's cool if you do. It's just I
Yeah.
don't get that personally. I thought Warbreaker was the weaker of the two personally. So
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely prefer Elantris over Warbreaker, but I guess
love that
they're
the
both
Seons
getting
made an appearance.
sequels.
The Seons, by the way, are from Elantris.
Yeah. hmm
If anybody was wondering, and maybe they haven't read that, but that's where the Seons are from. How they got there, obviously through Shadesmark, because that seems to be the key on they're where they're going.
Yeah, and it seems like the initial one came through with Wit, with
Yeah.
Hoyd.
Doesn't
Yeah,
surprise me. He seems to bring everything from everywhere.
stop
Thoughts
in the
on the
Yasmin debate.
Yasna debate?
Oh man,
That was an
yeah,
interesting one. Yasna's one who prides herself on logic and
yeah.
rationality, and yeah, just the way Odium just tore apart her entire foundation.
Oh yeah, yeah. He definitely knew what he was doing. He knew how to push her buttons in just the right way uh, to make her ruin herself.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, the way I look at it, if you're going to debate a god on anything, good luck. You better be a god yourself because they know a lot more than you.
Yeah.
But like I love the idea of doing the greatest good, but I've
Mhm.
always been to recognize you can't know anything, so all you can do is make the best decisions based on what you do know.
Exactly.
So I could kind of see where Yaz is coming from in a lot of ways, saying, "Hey, I'm
Sure.
doing the best I can to do the greatest amount of good I can."
Hmm.
But it's only natural for people to think about, first, their home, those close to them, and then expand beyond that. That's only
Yeah.
natural. And that's always going to, shade our view of what really is the greatest good. It could be
Mhm.
so difficult to kind of step back and ask yourself, would you be willing to sacrifice your family simply because it brought about a greater good? And I don't think anybody can really make that decision. And
Yeah.
that's the trap that Yasna fell into.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, what's that? Oh yeah, that one. Yasmin
Yeah.
really could have gone with the "Are you really going to side with the god of hatred?" Yeah, yeah, and I feel like she was trying to go there, but she couldn't break out of her logic mode
Yeah.
enough to really make that statement. But yeah,
Yeah.
you're right, Kyra. I think that would have been the route to go. But then of course I kind of wonder if there would have been the whole play because Odium was obviously making himself out to be kind of the good guy as well. So you know,
What was his purpose in
the god of
saving it?
hatred who wants to do the universe wide war. It's kind of one of those things where bad and good are in the eye of the beholder. You know,
Well, one thing
who's
I will
really good
say
and who's
is
really bad.
the greatest villains in any literature story are always the ones who absolutely believe that what they're doing is the right and
Oh
best
yeah,
thing. And
absolutely.
anytime anybody writes a villain, it's like I'm evil and I know I'm evil. I'm just like you're getting like low ranking right from the get go,
Right. Yeah.
right? And that's not what happened here. And you know, we could definitely go with as the god of hatred who wants universal wide war. Absolutely, that's an angle that bro that would. But I think Yasna as a character would have struggled with bringing that up because she's so focused on logic and rationality that to appeal to the emotional side of things simply isn't in her nature.
Yeah.
So, definitely, I think that's maybe why her character wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Although from one logical perspective, if you want to win an argument, appeal to the emotions of the one you're arguing with or against.
Right.
And that's good. From a logical perspective, that makes sense, but it's just not how Yasna is accustomed to thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. She's not really in tune with the emotional side of things.
Definitely not. Odium framed the Alethi and warlike warlord, but Odium, him is a warlike shard that is a warlord. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
He, but the great thing about Odium is he honestly believes that what he's doing is the right thing to do, which makes it such an outstanding villain. That is what makes a good villain.
Right. And it seems like Ray's when Odium was possessing Ray's, that was completely apparently Ray's was completely different. Teravangian is a whole other level of enemy because he's cunning. He has uh, he has emotional ties to the world. He obviously cares about his family so much so that he created a pocket in the spiritual realm just for them.
Yep.
He obviously knows what he's willing to sacrifice and what he isn't. So he's a whole other level of enemy.
Oh, big time. Which
Yeah.
is part of what
So
makes Teravangium an interesting but good choice for that. As boring
yeah,
as the character was before that, now the character is really interesting,
yeah,
and I do think Odium kind of takes on some of the, psyche of the one he's possessing,
he does. Yeah,
right?
seems that way. Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
cultivation did mess up.
Cultivation messed up big time. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely,
yeah,
cultivation messed up. Who knows where that's going to go? Um, as far as uh, cultivation just kind of like that side character that's standing on the side observing things but not doing a lot. I hope we see cultivation get more involved, 'cause I think at this point it's going to take all the rest of the gods
yeah.
to really kind of combat this new Cosmere threat, intergalactic Cosmere war. I think it's going to take more than one final arc in Stormlight. That'll just wrap up things on Roshar, but I don't think it'll be the end of the Cosmere war.
Right. Probably not.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking as far as that goes, which is interesting because we know that Mistborn is going to eventually have the dawn of the space age and have interplanetary travel.
Right.
There's going to be space battles in Mistborn. I just know it.
Yep.
And it would not surprise me if retribution is involved in that.
Could be. Yeah.
Because we know that Roshar's time has been slowed down relative
Yeah.
to the rest of the Cosmere. So what we're probably going to see is, I think a book mentioned something like 70 or 80 years or something on
Yeah.
Roshar, would then end up being like who knows how long in the rest of the Cosmere. It wouldn't
Mhm.
surprise me if at the end of that 70, 80 year span, Retribution has finally ready to go out into the greater Cosmere, and that's when they encounter these spacefaring Scadrians. And then there's like this big he's sending people through, through the cognitive realm, Shadesmar to Scadro. Meanwhile, Scadro's launched their battle fleet over to Roshar or something. I don't know.
Right.
But that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Era 2, just based on the end, Era 2 of Mistborn, I think pretty much aligns with where Roshar is now at the end of this book.
Right. Yeah. It definitely seems that way.
Because we
Yeah.
know in Era 2, like, it's more developed. They got steam engines and railways and, firearms and that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
that was mentioned when Witz traveled to Scadro, that's where he ended up. So, and I'm pretty sure there wasn't a massive time jump in his travels. We know Roshar time had slowed down,
Hmm.
but that's where he ended up. So I'm thinking Mistborn Era 2 is right about at the end of this. And then Mistborn Era 3 will be after the events of the second arc of this series. So we'll see where that goes.
Right.
Although that's the next set of books to be published, I think, is Era 3 of Mistborn.
Yeah. Era 3.
Computer
Yeah.
Age.
That.
That's my understanding. It'll be the Computer Age.
Oh well. Era 3 of Mistborn would be Ghostbloods.
Yeah, I think it's set in the Computer Age on
Oh,
Myth.
is it? Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
So the Ghost Bloods definitely be about them, but they'll kind of be like in the nine, somewhere between 1960 and 1990 Earth level attack, I
Mm,
think.
okay.
And
Yeah.
then the Space Age, as I understand, is the next. Space Age being like not launching space shuttles to orbit, but interstellar travel kind of space age.
Right.
I love that. I love how it's progressing technologically. That's really awesome.
Yeah, that is cool.
You
Yeah.
know, I can't think of a single other author that starts their book series in a actual medieval fantasy setting
Yeah.
or Renaissance level setting at the very least, and progresses that into a sci-fi series.
Right.
So that'll be fun. And
Yeah.
we'll need to do a stream on that too. That's how
We will. Yeah. We'll need
if
to
we're
do a stream for that for sure.
if we're both still doing this by the time Era 3 is complete.
Yeah.
But
So I'm curious what you think. Since we know the Dawn shards were used to shatter out Adonalsium, does that mean that Hoyd was party to that shattering?
either that or he acquired it at some point.
Yeah.
I kind of get the sense though, and I know you haven't read it yet, as far as the uh, Dragonsteel
Oh,
Prime.
Ren Steel Prime, yeah.
But I kind of got the sense from reading that, and this is the Prime version, of course, which we know is likely to be a lot different than the official canonical
Sure.
version once it's published. But I kind of got the sense from reading that Hoyd was still kind of developing and coming into his powers at that point.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, and the impression there is that this is still after the shattering, just very, very shortly after the shattering. So I don't think he was involved with that, but I think he was, because the impression I got, and sorry to spoil it for you, but let's face it, it's going to be very different on the official canonical version. But he was just kind of starting to discover that he had powers, like magic was just starting to be a thing. So I'm not thinking he was part of the initial shattering.
Mm,
I'm guessing he started as, a normal person. I don't know
yeah.
for sure, but that's what I'm thinking.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely have to read it at some point. It's not high on my priority list, but I do want to
It's
read
not
it.
canonical, so don't worry about it.
Yeah,
I,
right.
it's like the Way of Kings Prime. It's an interesting curiosity, but not canonical. And
Yeah.
honestly, the official version of Way of Kings is far better.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I think I
How
rated 3 or something.
how many pages is Dragon Steel Prime?
It's like 600 or 700.
Wow. All righty. Yeah, well, one of
I
these
gave
days
it
I
like
might give it a
two and a
shot.
half or three. I can't remember, something like that.
Yeah.
It came with one of the Kickstarter things, so I thought, why not? I'll
Yeah.
give it a shot. Give it a shot.
Yeah, that's where I got it too.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Cosmere in general is a lot of fun.
It is.
Well, I
Yeah,
think we've covered a lot in this chat,
yeah, we
but
have.
it's time to start winding it down a bit. A lot of fun. I mean, there's really a lot. We could start getting into the nitty gritty details, but we'll save that for you to read the book if you're watching on the replay.
Yeah, yeah,
'Cause there's a
definitely
lot to
read
it.
it, and I definitely don't want anybody to hear me say that it
Yeah,
was not an enjoyable read. It most definitely was.
absolutely.
There were just things that could have been left out, and things I maybe would have done a bit differently, but it's not my book.
Yeah, exactly. It's
It's just,
Brandon's book, and he could write any way he's want. We're allowed to say what we liked and didn't like. I'm
yeah,
pretty sure he's
yeah.
confident enough in his writing that he's not going to let it phase him too much. But he
Mhm,
seems to be a guy that takes critiques to heart and tries to improve upon that. So,
mhm.
but yeah, I mean, it's been a great conversation, Chas. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining me. This is a lot of fun, and we
yeah,
definitely got to do this again sometime. And
absolutely.
maybe when Era 3 comes out, we'll talk the first book and
Yeah.
kind of go from
Oh,
there. That'd be a lot of
absolutely.
fun.
I'm really excited.
You and me both. And we'll definitely have to chat on the Discord more about Sleep in a Sea of Stars, because that was the viewer's choice from November. But that
Yeah,
one book when it took up a lot of my time. But
yeah.
yeah, great chatting with you. Thanks for joining me. And definitely make sure you check out Chas's channel. I'm pretty sure I linked it. I'll make sure that I did. And join us over on the Discord. And, as I like to say, until next time, keep on reading. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Drew.